And they learned very early on that they have to take care of their own emotional needs. And the thing about like the whole porn use and masturbation and compulsive masturbation, right? Like the thing about that is many people don't even recognize the why behind it. They think they're just doing it because they're horny. But in actuality, there is an emotional deficit there. And they're trying to feel some type of emotional connection to where they have to now, I'm not going to go and call up my friend and talk to them about how I'm so depressed because my wife just left me and all of these things. Like, no, why would I do that? Instead, I have to continue on my pattern of self-soothing. I learned how to do this when I was younger, right? I cried out for so long and nobody heard me. I had to learn how to do this. So I turn to these things that can be here all the time, whenever I need them. They don't run out. It's always something new. Like this is filling some type of void for me. And with that attachment style, it can be extremely difficult to build meaningful sexual relationships that involve intimacy. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to season 2 of Dairy Discussions, the podcast where we keep it real, raw, and righteous. It's your girl, Brittany Broaddus-Smith, the #1 Christian sexologist and your favorite girlfriend. These last couple of episodes have been amazing. I know that I'm biased, but from the comments and the shares and the replies, I know y'all agree. So this episode is not going to be any different. I know that when it comes to sex, and we cross a lot of bridges. We cross a lot of intersections. And this idea of attachment styles has been really popular in the media, and a lot of therapists and specialists have been talking about it. And so obviously attachment styles is one of those intersections with sex. So I knew that there was only one person that I could bring on to have this conversation fully and completely and intelligently. So without further ado, please welcome to the stage. And when I'm speaking, because one day we're going to be on the stage, the one and only Amanda Mbata. Hi. Hey, girlfriend.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Thank you for Thank you for agreeing. I appreciate you. I appreciate your support of the podcast, of my work, and just all the things that you do in the way in which we kind of intersect with this work. And I see you from afar. And sometimes I be like, girl, please stay out of my business.
It'd be like that sometimes. It'd be like that.
Some of your posts, I be like, I just opened this app. Like, can you give me a minute? So please and thank you.
I gotta release it.
Yeah, okay. So it's already, I'm fair warning you. This how this finna go. Okay, like don't blame me. It's when y'all got stuff, tag her. Direct your comments directly to where it belongs because she get ready to get y'all together. So let's go ahead and jump right on in with our favorite segment of the show. As for me and my house, which is our listener submitted questions, comments, concerns, or scenarios. And we've been doing this season where we're allowing our expert guests to be the one to give their responses to what they would do as for them in a house. Okay. All right. This listener says, hey, girlfriend. Hey. I'm always into the type to either get too invested in a relationship or completely run away when things get a little bit too serious. It wasn't until recently when I started going to therapy that I started noticing that maybe this shows up when I'm having sex as well. Sometimes I find myself seeking sex or offering sex when I need to feel close. And other times when people are making bid for sexual connection, I run away because it's just too vulnerable. Because of therapy, I know that there's a pattern here, but I just don't know where it came from or how to break it. How do I start disconnecting my emotions from my sexual experiences?
So I think we're actually going to get into this in our, broader conversation. But my immediate response is you don't need to separate your emotions from your sexual experience. You actually want that to be something that is intertwined, that's working together in your favor, rather than putting you in uncomfortable situations where either you are, like you said, making bids for sex because you want to feel close, or on the other side, you're running away from it because it feels too close. What this is sounding like, though, is disorganized attachment style. And we're going to talk about that, what each one of those attachment styles are. But disorganized attachment style is a combination of both the anxious, preoccupied attachment and the avoidant attachment style. And within both of those put together, you get someone who comes close, but then they run away. They come close, but then they run away. They feel like love, it feels good, but it also feels extremely painful. And so that's where you get that back and forth experience with someone who has that type of attachment style.
So what you would do as for your house is figure out how to navigate that and find a healthy way to merge the two.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, in my house, we're gonna keep our emotions and our sexuality intertwined.
Okay, you heard that. As for her house, emotions and sexuality need to be intertwined.
Yeah.
So let's then, that was a perfect segue to, let's demystify this idea of attachment styles, because we know as therapy is becoming more popular, therapeutic language is reaching the masses and the lay people, and they don't be using it right all the time. So can you briefly walk us through the different attachment styles? First tell us what that even is and the different kinds and what they mean.
Yeah, so an attachment style is simply the way we connect in our relationships. And I'm going to try to explain this in the least scientific way possible so that everyone understands. So when you think about an attachment style, it simply just means this is how I connect to myself, to others, and the world around me. From there, we have 4 different attachment styles. We have secure attachment. And secure attachment, it really just means that, let's just say that since we're going to probably get around to this, childhood, we'll just say it started in childhood. Your parents were, they were close, they were connected, they attended to your needs, they were attuned to you, and you felt like you could grow up in an environment where your emotional needs were met. And so now you're in this broader world, living as if people will care about you, and that means you can care about them. Then we have anxious preoccupied. Anxious preoccupied attachment style is based in the understanding that you have to beg people to want you. You have to prove that people will desire you. You have to really put yourself in a position where you are the one, kind of like how the question framed it. You are the one who's like, hey, I have this, and this. Can you come want me now? Do you want to be with me now? Anxious avoidant. With that attachment style, you have someone who is in a situation where they feel their emotional needs do not take precedence. And because their emotional needs are not important, what they're going to do is defer to the other person. And in deferring to the other person, what's happening is there's a level of resentment that's building up. But this resentment was always there because somewhere along the line, they learned that their needs don't matter, that they have to always be outward focused. But by being outward focused, they self-soothe. And in self-soothing, you learn, I can do it all by myself. I don't really need anyone. So closeness feels scary and you push people away. Now, as I stated before, the disorganized attachment style, that's the 4th attachment style. And it's also called fearful avoidant. And within that attachment style, again, you learn that love feels good, but love also hurts. And the reason that we say that is because this attachment style usually has parents who are, or caregivers who are either in some way, form, or fashion using, so alcohol, drugs, there's some type of abuse going on in the home, something where the house is always up in flames, but then there's a peace at some point. So you learn that there's this back and forth when it comes to love, and you go out pursuing relationships that mimic that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I hurt myself in there a little bit. I won't engage. I refuse to engage. So then with those being laid out, thank you for making it or laying out in a way, like you said, that the everyday person can understand. And so for our listener, I mean our listener who sent in the question, as well as just those who can also relate, how then did we get to the place, or did she get to the place where she felt like emotions didn't need to be connected, or like the solution to this up and down was to detach emotions? Like why is that the next step to addressing these concerns?
Yeah, so that's the part of the fearful avoidant attachment. That is the avoidant side. The opposite side is like, no, I need all the emotions, right? But when you're in that tug of war, it's like, okay, I would rather have peace than have this different experience. And for a lot of people who fall into the anxious avoidant patterns, me having peace looks like detachment. I need to get away from everyone and everything in an intimate kind of way. So that doesn't mean I'm not going to have friends, right? That doesn't mean I'm not going to even be in a relationship. It doesn't mean I'm not going to be married. But what it means is that there's a limitation to how much of myself I'm going to give you. There's a limitation to how far I'm going to go with you. And if it feels too uncomfortable, I'm going to put up a barrier. And I know that I'm only willing to go this far with you. Once it gets to that barrier, that's where I begin to self-soothe, because those are the needs that I'm too afraid to really bring out and lay on the table to put in the hands of someone else.
Wow. Wow. So would you say that childhood is also the start of how these attachment styles begin to shape how we show up in sexual or intimate relationships? Or how do these attachment styles shape how we show up in romantic and sexual relationships?
At the core, attachment styles are all about how we do what we do and why we do what we do. And it's really the why, right? When we think about attachment styles, we get to learn, why do I show up like this? And yes, attachment styles impact the way we like show up as far as our emotional closeness or even the lack thereof. But as far as it impacting our sex and our intimacy, which I think is also important for this conversation to understand, that those two things are not synonymous. And I can especially when it comes to attachment styles, like we can have sex and I can be so far away from you. Sex and intimacy, two different things, right? But attachment styles also influence our engagement. And even when we think about like interest in pornography and masturbation and like why we do those things, really attachment styles can answer the why behind it. But when it comes to it influencing our romantic relationships, it can influence why we choose the partners we choose, why we're connected to certain people, why we can't let certain relationships go. I mean, it goes down the list of why we attach, why we detach. It can answer so much for us.
Wow. And would you say it also impacted it? I know this wasn't one of the questions, but my mind is gone. Yeah. Would you say that also impacts how we detach, right? Like that, the discussion has been another discussion I've been seeing a lot lately is whether closure is necessary. Like, that last conversation or that last meetup, for some people that last, that last little boop, 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 or that last psychologist, whatever, to get it out your system, if you will.
Yep.
Would our attachment style explain that as well? And are we fooling ourselves? Like, is closure a myth?
I will say that it can be different for each person, but your attachment style is influencing the way you need to detach. So let's play it by each one. For someone who is secure, they're probably not going to require a level of closure, right? When someone who is secure understands that a relationship is no longer serving them, and not only that the other person is not serving them, but that they can no longer serve the other person, they are quick to end the relationship and to literally wipe their hands clean of it, but not in a way where it's like, I hate you, you hate me, let's just, just F it, right? No, this is just not good for us, and we're going to end this relationship. For someone who falls into the anxious avoidant patterns, they're going to be someone who will ghost you. They don't need any closure, right? They don't need any closure. They might be sad as I don't know what, but they're not going to request any closure from you. It's more of a, you got too close. I'm feeling like this is too much for me. I'm just going to disappear. Wow. Now, then you have the person who is anxious preoccupied. This is the person who needs all the closure. This person and the fearful avoidant. They need closure, right? And in a lot of situations, I think it's also important for somebody out there to understand, for if you fall into the anxious preoccupied attachment framework, you might not even really want the person. You might be over the relationship, but it's your system. It's your attachment system that's continuing to be flared up, wanting you to identify something as your home base. And not just something, but someone as your home base. And once you've identified that person as your home base, it's like, this is it. So yeah, I need closure. Yeah, we need to talk about this 35 times. No, I'm not going to block your number. Yes, I'm going to come over. Yes, you can come over. Yes, we can still have sex. Meanwhile, that's you trying to maintain connection. That's you trying to say, get affirmation of, we're still good, right? You still love me, right? When for somebody who's avoidant, they just wanted something. There's no emotions attached.
Right. And so what, maybe even a combination of both, like those folks who, asking for a friend, those folks who have that experience, like that anxious experience, want that, like that home-based piece really resonates. But those people who are like, when you leave me, if you disconnect from me, it's a problem. Like that's when the feelings of rejection, like you said, that triggered the system feelings of rejection. Yeah. But I'm going to reach out for closure, I'm going to try to turn the tables so that you are still now reaching out to me, making bids for my affection, my attention. And once you do that, then I can be like, you know what? No, thank you. Mm-hmm. This doesn't work for me. We're not serving each other. Like it's easier for the person to say no to others than to have others say no to them.
Yes, that's
where does that fall?
That's anxious avoidant. Yes. And it fits perfectly into a relationship where, let's say the pairing is someone who is anxious preoccupied with someone who's anxious avoidant. The person who's anxious preoccupied, they're going to freely give you their love. They're going to freely dump it on you. They're going to just be there, right? And it can feel suffocating to someone who's anxious avoidant. It feels like it's too much. They don't want to be engulfed in love. They don't want to feel like, someone is pursuing them in that for that level of intimacy. When that happens, the anxious avoidant begins to withdraw. They withdraw. And then you have the anxious preoccupied person who eventually is like, you know what, this is too much withdrawal. I can't take this. I'm going to leave. So then they begin to pull away. Once this person pulls away, the anxious avoidant person no longer feels threatened. So now they're like, I miss my boo. Can't come back. And they're like, oh, I do love you, actually. I do want to be with you, actually. And so guess what? That pulls the anxious, preoccupied person back in. And then once the preoccupied person begins to feel safe, then they lavish them with love again. Then the avoidant person feels engulfed in love. Then they pull away. Then the cycle just continues until one of them, usually the avoidant person, ends the relationship and means it and finally walks away. And that is most times how that type of cycle comes to an end.
Wow. Then I was like, get ready to be my next question. How do we break that cycle? And so what does it take then for either of them, the anxious preoccupied or the anxious avoidant, to meet it? Right? Because I can envision that cycle where somebody is establishing a boundary or acknowledging like a emotional wound or a violation or something that's been done, and then they say, okay, that morning they feeling themselves and they believe in themselves and they want more for themselves, and they're saying, I'm not going to do this doesn't align with my values, well, you did this, it hurt me this way, so I'm done. And then when the other person respects that boundary and then disappears, it's like, ho, 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 like I wanted you to fight. Like, how do we mean it? Like, how do we get to the point where we mean that when we set that boundary or make that disconnect and actually stay disconnected?
You gain some self-value. You start to understand that you don't have to be at someone's beck and call, especially for the anxious preoccupied person. You begin to transform your understanding of what it means to be desired. You start to really examine, what does my system feel like when it's safe? That is key for all of these attachment styles, because again, the secure attachment style, their system feels safe in relationships especially when they're with someone who else is secure. Like if they're with someone who's secure, they're good. And our aim should really be to pair with someone who is secure. But again, like we live in a broken, fallen world. It's not going to happen like that. We have trauma, right? But if you're with someone who is intentional about unlearning their patterns around love that are unhealthy, unlearning their patterns around attachment and view of self and the world that are faulty, then you can make it work. And when I say, I hate using that terminology because I don't just want to make something work with somebody, right?
Right,
No,
right.
that don't really fit with me. But what I mean by that is you're working on your stuff, I'm working on my stuff, and it makes us peaceable when we come together because we're both actively pursuing a secure attachment, not just dependent upon what you do for me and what I do for you, but like in my personal life, I'm going to therapy, I'm reading books, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm really focusing in on what actions do I need to pull away from that will put me on a path that looks more secure than where I am right now. And a lot of it is going to be a mindset shift versus just trying to change your behaviors. Because if you're just trying to change your behaviors, that's not going to be as long lasting. The word says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So eventually you're going to go right back to those same patterns if you do not have a mindset shift.
Yeah. Wow. We got some work to do.
Yes, we do.
And it's not, I love that folks, no, honestly, because I love that folks are going to therapy. I love that the God plus therapy, or prayer plus therapy kind of mindset is taking hold and not feeling like you have to be kind of fractured in like a us versus them type of mindset. But it can't, as you said, it can't just be something that we do to say that we've done it. Like it can't just be something to check off the list. We have to go in open for transformation. But a lot of times those emotional wounds that happened in childhood, that has happened in relationships, color our outlook on what healing and help, looks like. Yeah. So how does one identify the difference between like your sister being triggered to say, okay, this is not safe, you need to make a sound movement or change, right? Versus, oh, I'm avoiding conflict, or I'm avoiding, hard conversations, or, whatever. How do we know with any of the types, how do we know the difference between our body speaking to us and telling us what to do in a way that we should do it versus our body telling us to like a fight or flight response?
Mm-hmm. Well, for anyone who is not actively knowing and learning and understanding their bodies, that's going to be difficult. I always tell people that the way we understand our emotions is by being in tune with our bodies. And if there is some disruption there, it's hard to tell. I can always remember a time when I would feel a little nervous, even before things like this. I would feel something in my body like, oh my gosh, this doesn't feel right. And over time, I began to really get in touch with my body. I learned that feelings like anxiety, nervousness, anticipation, those things feel the same. And they're not always and you're not in tune with your body and in identifying your emotions, you can easily say, oh my gosh, I'm so scared, when really you're just anticipating something. You're getting excited about something, but it feels the same way in the body. So the same thing goes for like butterflies, right? Oh, my stomach just started turning when I saw them. I just felt so good. Like all these things. Girl, no, that was IBS. Like you so rapidly run. Run. So,
Girl, you got gas.
right, like that was just gas, seriously. So, putting yourself in situations where you can begin to say, my body feels safe right now. How many times, especially as Black women, can we say that we go through a day and we're like, wow, my body just feels so relaxed right now. My body feels safe right now. This is what safety feels like. Put yourself in situations like that. Identify what that feels like. And then when you're in some type of relationship, whether it's friendship, family relationship, romantic relationship, and your body feels like that, you already know what safety feels like. You already know what a calmness feels like. And you also know the opposite of that. So then if you're with someone and those feelings are showing up, you can easily say, this doesn't feel like the safety that I've already established on my own.
Wow. That's so, that's so good. And I've actually noticed, like I said, from being in therapy, like similar differences, right? I was saying to my therapist not long ago that since my mom passed, she is the last person, or she was the only person at the time that I could say, no matter what, I never questioned what she said or her motives, right? As someone who can be, anxious, attached, preoccupied, here and there, but also a little neurospicy with, rejection sensitivity and all of those kind of things. I pay attention to micro expressions. I pay attention to pattern changes, and I see how folks respond and react to others, and not intentionally, but automatically begin to assess how that aligns or misaligns with how they react or respond to me in similar situations. And I remember that, like, calling my mom, like I never thought twice to call my mom and ask her for money when I was going through something. If I called her and said, hey, I need you to watch your grandkids, and she did all kinds of hooping and hollering and huffing and puffing, girl, 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, which one can you do? And I never thought twice about her taking too long to answer. And she'd be like, she called me by my middle name. She'd be like, oh my God, Danielle, for how long? That never bothered me, never worried about it. And I would come drop them off and go on about my business and have the time of my life. But with others, if I ask for something, if they take too long to respond, or if they like stuttering over their words or ask too many follow-up questions, I will be like, you know what? Never mind. It's fine. Like I'll take care of it. I'll do it. And it was like she was the last person that I didn't have to do that. And so that was how I identified comfort true comfort in a relationship. Like if I ask you for something and I don't think about whether it is not in an inconsiderate way, whether it's an inconvenience, but like I am okay with my ask being inconvenient, still being willing to do it. No. And knowing that there are times where you ask things of me that are inconvenient and you're not and I'm still willing to do it. And I go out of my way, even when things are inconvenient, to not let the other person know that is inconvenient, because I know how being an inconvenience feels to me. But I didn't have to do all of that mental calculus with my mom. And so I began to look at the relationships in which I did that, and then had to ask, like, okay, is this not a safe relationship? Or am I putting on the person fears that I have elsewhere. And it was really helpful being able to identify the difference. But you're right, some of those sensations, like concern about the person and inconveniencing them, and then also concern about whether they're gonna be talking about me when they leave, or if they doing it, they doing me. Because I say all the time, don't do me no favors. And then my therapist was like, why can't people do you favor right here? Like, what's wrong with that? I'm like, because I want you to want to do it. Like, and she was like, how much of the things that you do for people that you actually want to do, that you were sitting around in your house just waiting for them to ask so that you could go to the market for them or pick them up and take them to the airport and watch their kids. And I was like, I get it.
No, but
that wasn't something.
That's really a good example, though. And I think the other side of one of the things I said is, even when you found safety with yourself, we have to make sure that it's not a false safety, that it's not like a sense of safety that is not actually there. It's something that we're running from. And that is running from is usually the intimacy, the vulnerability, the conflict, the connection, the inconvenience, right, of connecting with other people. And if I've established safety and quiet and calm with myself, I might not challenge myself to be put in a situation where I might be having those things disrupted, even if it is in a healthy manner. A lot of people will say, oh, this person, they disrupted my peace and they did this, they did that. But was it that you just never had anyone to challenge some of your negative patterns? Was it that you just never had anyone to have conflict with? That's why you had so much peace. Because relationships, oftentimes, especially when we're thinking about like emotional distance and intimacy, sex, like marriage, all of those things comes with a level of vulnerability that we have to be willing to open up to others. We have to be willing to, put ourselves on the back burner sometimes, like you mentioned with the inconvenience. Like, if I'm not willing to do those things, then maybe it's a sense of false safety that I've created with myself, and I just don't want to connect.
Wow. So with that, how would you say someone is able to identify, because this is, sex and, right? And that sense of false safety and all of those, like knowing the difference between what this sensation in my body means versus others, that whole thing. How is someone able to recognize when sex is being used to soothe an attachment wound as opposed to this for genuine pleasure or genuine bonding or intimacy?
Yeah. So this is a great question. So when we think about the anxious preoccupied attachment style, specifically that one, because we talked about closure, and let's say it's the end of a relationship and this person is seeking some type of closure. Most people who fall into that category will end up trying to connect with their partner in a way that is sexual in some nature. And it's maladaptive and it's going against what they're actually trying to do, which is in the relationship. Like, we're closing this chapter out. But what sex does for someone who is anxious preoccupied is what it does for all of us, right? Really, at the end of the day, is it attaches us to people. But it's like further rearing up their attachment system to the point where it's going to be even more difficult for them to withdraw from someone. So I can even remember, like, when I was going through my own divorce, and I was like, do you remember when I called you? Yeah. Or texted you? Girl, I did not even want to have sex with him. Like, why I do that? But again,
I feel like that was one of my questions. I was like, what are we getting out of this? Was it good the last time?
I was like, what is going on? Like, I know I did not want to do that. But it was something about, like, okay, this relationship is ending. My system was all over the place, because again, I was losing my home base, even though it was like a sucky home base, right? It was still mine, and I'm losing that. And so because I'm losing that, there's a sense of insecurity there. And with that sense of insecurity, well, I got to figure out, how do I save my home base? And not save the marriage, right? But how do I soothe my attachment system? And if I need to soothe my attachment system, one of the only ways I can even connect with this person anymore is for some emotionless sex, right? So let's do that. And that is a way to soothe your system. On the other hand, let's deal with the anxious avoidant attachment style. Many people who fall into the anxious avoidant framework, they are some of the most users who we have, like as far as like porn addiction, masturbation, like really heavily into those things because it's a form of self-soothing. And they learned very early on that they have to take care of their own emotional needs. And the thing about like the whole porn use and masturbation and compulsive masturbation, right? Like the thing about that is many people don't even recognize the why behind it. They think they're just doing it because they're horny. But in actuality, there is an emotional deficit there. And they're trying to feel some type of emotional connection to where they have to now, I'm not going to go and call up my friend and talk to them about how I'm so depressed because my wife just left me and all of these things. Like, no, why would I do that? Instead, I have to continue on my pattern of self-soothing. I learned how to do this when I was younger, right? I cried out for so long and nobody heard me. I had to learn how to do this. So I turn to these things that can be here all the time, whenever I need them. They don't run out. It's always something new. Like, this is filling some type of void for me. And with that attachment style, it can be extremely difficult to build meaningful sexual relationships that involve intimacy. So remember earlier, that sex and intimacy is not synonymous. Again, we need both to have a meaningful relationship, a meaningful like married relationship with someone, right? We got to have both. But in many situations when we're struggling with our own insecurities related to relationships and romance and love, it impedes on our ability to really connect with someone in that kind of way. So then we end up having a couple who one person is like, I feel like my needs aren't getting met. I feel like, this is not happening. Well, the other person is like also very detached emotionally. So we have to figure out a way for both people to begin healing their own attachment wounds.
Okay. So then how will we know when we've arrived, right? Like how does someone with a secure attachment show up sexually? What does that look like?
Someone with a secure attachment is going to show up sexually in the same way they show up within their relationships. They're always looking out for others, but they're also looking out for themselves. They don't put themselves so far behind someone else that their own needs don't matter, which is what the anxious avoidant person does. And they don't put someone's needs like all the way at the front while they are like wondering, can I have mine met a little bit? Like someone who the anxious preoccupied would do. But someone who's secure is going to show up and want to know, how can I meet your needs? And this is how you can meet mine. And I think that is the piece where both of these insecure attachment styles, well, all three insecure attachment styles miss the mark. Because it's never this is how you can support me. This is what you can do for me. Right? And even outside of just like the sexual relationship, when we think about expressing our needs to people in general, most people who fall into the anxious avoidant patterns, they're not going to be able to communicate their needs. They're not going to be able to do it well because they've already pushed their needs to the side over time to the point where many of them may not even know what their needs are, but they know they have something. And they build up a sense of resentment when they feel like their needs aren't being met, even if they have not communicated those needs. On the other side, the anxious, preoccupied person understands their needs. They know what they want. They're giving them what they want. But they have this world where only their needs exist. And so it isolates them from their partner to the point where their partner is like, well, maybe I don't matter. So again, it has to be a balance of, hey, I want to meet your needs and this is how you can meet mine.
Wow, that's good. Now, so this is if we can't do it in spot. So this is putting you on the spot a little bit, but I do define the four different types of attachment styles, right? So I'm gonna give you this sentence stem, and you finish the sentence based on the four different types, right? And so I want to have sex with you because, and then how would each of them finish that sentence?
Okay. I want to have sex with you because I love you. Anxious of, I'm going to say that's both secure and anxious, preoccupied. But
okay,
I want to have sex with you because.
Did you see? I was about to be like secure.
Yeah. So that it does fall into that category. It does.
Okay.
But it could also be anxious, preoccupied.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to have sex with you because I'm horny. What do you? So,
just because I've assessed my need.
Just because I'm.
Oh, but that's only one-sided.
Exactly.
So we avoid it.
Yes, we're gonna put that one into the avoidant category. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So the reason why we can separate those two, when we think about I want to have sex with you because I love you. Yes, it can be secure, but we also have to think about the anxious, preoccupied person who is like, I love you, I want to be with you. Like I'm here. Like it's more of like an anxious approach to it. A more appropriate message would be, I want to have sex with you because I want to be connected to you. That would be falling more so in the secure pattern.
Because that's where the intimacy and the bonding.
Exactly.
There's a purpose, a mutual purpose.
Yes, and you already know I love you. You already know I love you. I already know you love me. We don't have to, we're here.
It's already established that I enjoy this. This feels good. But I want to connect. I want to be closer to you. I want to connect with you more. I want us to grow as a couple. And sex is one of the many ways that we do that.
There's already safety here. But I want to have sex with you because I love you. That's like a ploy. Like, hey, can't you see I love you? Can you please come love me?
If you love, and that more is like, I want to have sex with you because I love you. And if you love me, you'll have sex.
You'll have sex with me. And then when you do have sex with me, and then I realize you don't love me, that's going to be very painful, especially for sharers and just preoccupied.
And then that means every time I'm uncertain of whether you love me,
I'm going to, we got to do something.
But open it wide and.
Yes, because you're not going to that attachment wound.
Because any other time I made a bid for love or connection, you didn't really bite. And sex seems to be the only way you respond. Right. Another thing that's called, I want to say it's Sue Johnson. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Sue Johnson, who came up with the terminology Solace sex.
Yes.
And that is people who have sex to confirm or affirm themselves in a relation, their role, their spot, their position in a person's life or heart through sex. And so it's not to bond, it's not out of love, it's out of uncertainty.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we did. So what's the other? Who did we miss? Oh, the confused people.
Yes. So that was more so
the double-minded one.
Yes, definitely. I want to have sex with you because I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
I just hit you, right? I came home sloppy drunk. I beat the kids. I'm sorry. Yeah. So again, love is painful, but it also feels good. And this is where I'm trying to make love feel good because I just did something extremely painful. And it's not only making the other person feel good, right? This is about self-soothing too. So I need to feel something.
And I can imagine And I can imagine if you complied with it, then you're somehow accepting my apology. And so I can kind of, whatever guilt that I'm carrying, I can kind of lay down. When the orgasm comes, the guilt goes out the door because we good now.
Exactly.
But then if you come to me in 2 days trying to go back through this situation, it's like, ho.
Right.
We done already,
We made up.
fixed this already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I apologize in advance to those of you who are watching this. I did not think that we was going to get cut up like that with that whole exercise. So, wow.
It's a lot. Yeah, answers the how and why.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I want to have sex with you because I'm sorry. Like, how many you watching it? How many times, wife, have you said you was going to do something and didn't keep your word? So now you coming in with all the bells and the whistles, trying to make up for where you messed up.
Right.
Even hasn't even like you didn't do something you were supposed to do. You didn't wash this. You didn't take the trash out. You whatever you didn't do. And now this thing that your partner has been asking you to do all this time. They've been asking you to rub their back. They've been asking you to rub their feet. They've been asking you to help around the house. You begin to do it because you're sorry. Not because you've had a mindset change and realize I need to be better in this area. I actually been dropping the ball in this area. But no, I don't want you to be mad at me anymore. So let me do this now because I know that this is the thing that's going to soften your heart towards me.
Right. It's manipulation.
So, and that's actually, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's actually quite manipulative.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I just don't know how much further we need to go here because I don't have any malpractice insurance.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so we'll close with these last two. Because the other question was like, what are the first steps to unlearning those unhealthy attachment patterns? But I think that you mentioned that earlier as far as like acknowledging that the pattern is there and working on the mindset change.
Yes.
More than just the behavior change. So I think that's
dealing with that rejection and abandonment piece, like really digging into that.
Yeah, which means for most of us, we need to go all the way back to where the first wound is. I think a lot of us sometimes we don't go back far enough.
Yeah,
we'll go back like us, like folks who've experienced divorce. We can go back through the divorce and the more because those are the more acute feelings. Those are the more like easily, drawn to our memory, brought back to memory. Issues and wounds, but those aren't the root. We need to go back to that very first insult that, that first door slammed in your face, so to speak, where that rejection seed was first planted to do that work. And quite frankly, it's quite ghetto because my therapist is always talking about, where did this start? Where do you think this came from? Girl, I don't know.
Right.
Like this. I don't remember. And she was like, and why do you think you don't remember? She's like, because you remember a lot of stuff. Yeah. And so the thing that you don't remember, there's a reason. Okay. All right. Y'all therapists always trying to stick together. Anyway, how do you think, or what would you offer to couples who are having to navigate different attachment patterns?
I would say on your journey of navigating your own, be sure to understand what the other person's experience is. And what that takes is a level of empathy and curiosity. So the empathy and the curiosity is what's going to help you understand it a little bit from someone else's perspective. Let's say y'all are in the middle of conflict You won't be so quick to shut the other person down because you're attempting to be curious about their experience, about their wounds, about the questions they have in a way that will open up conversation in the relationship instead of shutting things down. So be empathetic towards one another and be curious about the other person's experience. Really choosing to take your eyes off yourself.
Oh, good. That was good. She good, y'all. She's not always coming to cut us up. She got big insight. And sometimes she could be very nice. But that's fine. Okay, so to close us out, if the folks listen, they have so many takeaways and they're on their rethinking. At this point in the podcast, they're watching it and they're rethinking their entire life. However, if they don't take anything else from this conversation, what is one thing you want them to understand about attachment styles and how the different lines can impact their intimate and sex life?
If you take nothing else away, I would love for you to walk away from this experience asking yourself, why do I do this thing that I do? Just like the listener question. She was here, I'm not sure, was questioning, why am I doing this thing? Become curious about your own experiences. Become curious about your behaviors. Asking yourself, why am I doing this? But the other side of that is to be honest with your answer. Am I doing this from a place for love? Am I doing this from love? What am I doing and why? What's causing these disruptions in my relationships with myself, with God, with family, with friends, whoever? What's causing these disruptions? And can I be honest with myself as I answer my portion of it?
Wow. I tried, y'all. I really did try. Well, you have your homework. You know what to do. This was, and I'm not even shocked because I told y'all in the beginning this is how she get down, like randomly. Don't even like care to build relationship with you first. She just slice you all up. But just like there's certain things that takes a lot of like effort and energy and hard work and sometimes pain, the healing on the other side is so much greater. And that quite even how she closed it was, why is it that I do the things that I do? I think that question is necessary for everybody at any type of attachment style or attachment pattern, even the secure person, to be able to ask yourself, why is it that I do the things that I do? That's a testimony in that. Because while there may be people in life who have a secure attachment, that does not mean their life was without turmoil or trouble or trauma or whatever. They just had the resources, ability, or have done the work to overcome. And I think it's helpful to be able to look back to say, this is what I've overcame. And for the believer, this is what the Lord had brought me through. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And for those who have the insecure types of attachments, asking that question of why is it that I do these things? Here, Lord, here's where I need you to come in and clean up. Here's the part of my heart that still is in need of you. Here's the part of my heart that I've kept to myself. Here's the part of my heart that I've not surrendered. Here's the part of my heart that I'm still afraid you can't show up in, as much as I trust you, as much as I believe in you, as much as I, whatever. There's still a little fear in here. There's still worry in here. There's still parts of the scripture that have not penetrated these pieces of my heart, and I need you. So Amanda, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This was phenomenal. And I pray and trust the Lord that there's been technological issues that when I press end on this recording, that the sound is there and everybody is happy and we don't have to record again. Because as I'm sitting here, the last 3 minutes, I'm like, is it working?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody, thank you for watching. This has been Dirty Discussions, the podcast where we keep it real, raw, and righteous. I have had the honor and distinct pleasure of interviewing the Amanda Mbata, licensed clinical social worker, and she has talked us through all things, even some of the things we did not ask for, about sex and attachment styles. I am Brittany Broaddus-Smith, the #1 Christian sexologist and your favorite girlfriend. See you next week.
Bye.